Going live shortly. Yes, we're live now. All right. Welcome to Wednesday Word. Wednesday Word. I should have asked you ahead of time to contribute to the nothing talk. So let me see. What was I talking? Oh, my kids. Well, wait a minute. We'll let a couple people get on. But yes. Well, we have Good Friday services coming up too. Good Friday services coming up. And we'll do our seven last words that Jesus utters upon the cross. And we're going to have our services. And I need to make sure I talk to the music department. I'm going to just send a text now so I don't forget, or if they're listening, we need the music department ready for the seven last words.
Let's go.
Yes. So while people are getting on, I am getting hold of the music department so I don't forget. But let's see. Good Friday, Music Live. So come out and be a part of our services. And actually, Evangelist Hill, you will be a part of our Good Friday service.
Yes. Excited.
All right. And if my music department receives the text, is quick, short, to the point. All right, praise the Lord. Right. We need music. We need music.
Right.
Friday, Good Friday. Praise the Lord, Minister Thompson. God bless you. Glad to have you on. Brother Deontay, Cincinnati in the house. God bless you, my brother. Good to see you. Brother Deontay, you got to come up and pay us a visit. Come pay us a visit. I got some text coming back. All right. Sister Leticia, God bless you. Good to see you. Evangelist Ellis, God bless you. Glad to have you on as well. All right, so we're giving a few moments for them to come on. And hey, today we're going to talk about some things that are serious and involving relationships, but I think it's also good too for people to hear it, as well as even our young people.
Absolutely.
Because just talking about relationships, and we'll get there, but maybe we don't always focus enough on looking for the right qualities in a person. Sometimes it may be just more superficial elements, or they make me laugh or something like that, but we need more than they make me laugh. Right. So we hope our young people and everyone will get a part of that in today's message. All right, so we'll start a little bit with the nothing talk. We have I believe enough people on. So one thing that's starting to move kind of big is AI, the artificial intelligence. And my children, I mean, they I want to say at a certain point, we were like, just Google it. But now they're talking more AI, chat. Let me see, GP. Let me see, I think it's GPT, something along those lines. Elon Musk is behind that one. And
for Twitter?
I think well, no, not for Twitter. I mean, Elon Musk, he gets his hands involved in a number of different things.
That's all I only know him from the Twitter host stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, remember where he got Tesla, launched a satellite into space. No, the trips to space. That's what they were doing, trips to space. He was trying to do an underground transportation system that, you just get in and it just like, I don't know, let's say New York to Chicago in, 40 minutes. I don't know, whatever. But that one, I mean, but he got to burrow underground, make all these tunnels and all that kind of stuff. That didn't pan out yet. He had, roof panels? Yeah, he had roof panels that was supposed to be, I think, special roofing that was supposed to save energy and all. He's got his hands in a lot of stuff. But this AI thing, and he said he made some statement about people need to pay attention because it's going to take over the world. But in some of these AIs, you could tell it, I want you to write my paper on this subject, and it'll start writing the paper. I had Chandler give it a couple Bible questions, and I told him, I said I'm kind of so with it. You know, we got some answers, but some I'll say generic and safe enough. But I do like how he put, you know, they'll say something like, you know, Christians, you know, like, well, most Christians believe like this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
So
very generic.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, but I give it some credit. I mean, it wasn't horrible.
Off. Okay.
Right. He tried to bring some substance. I give it. I would say I gave it a 90 on the answer. He got a 90, okay?
He got a 90.
He got a 90. But I asked another question about the lineage of, I'll tell you this. I asked him, in the lineage of Joseph, is Joseph's line cursed when it comes to Jesus? I did. And he said, this is what the AI said. It said, because Joseph was not Jesus' biological father.
Wow.
Right. That there would be no curse applied. I was like, okay, but what he missed was in Haggai, where you deal with in Haggai, it basically talks about Joseph's line now being blessed because how faithful they serve God and so forth like that or whatever. But anyway, I give it some kudos. But AI is huge now, guys. AI is huge. I don't know. I mean, I still never believe that a computer is going to replace people totally. But yeah, they can replace a lot. Bezos.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. The other thing I have, and then we'll get into the Bible class, is Bezos, who used to be Microsoft's CEO, now is the owner of the LA Clippers. And the LA Clippers have always shared a stadium with the LA Lakers. They've always shared the same stadium. They're both in LA. They shared the stadium. So, you know, LA has all these championship banners up and all this stuff, and the Clippers have nothing.
Nothing.
So Bezos decided, he decided, I'm going to build my own stadium. So he's building a $3 billion stadium. And when you hear that number, I'm like, man, that's a lot of money. You know, and he had to pay, I got to look up how much he had to pay. He might have had to pay around that much for the Clippers. You know, he had to pay a lot of money to get the team. They're selling for billions of dollars now. And I said, well, let me look up this man's net worth. It's $80 billion. $80 billion.
Wow.
So now I'm like, this $3 billion stadium is nothing.
Nothing for him. Nothing for him.
Now, he might be getting some tax money, but I mean, LA, they got so much going on. I don't think they doing tax stadiums like we are. You know, Cleveland's like, hey, we want you. We want to keep the team. Right. LA's like, we got 40 million teams. You can go if you want to go.
Right. Yeah, really.
So I was looking and I was thinking, think about this though. And this is just us as a society. We have one man with 80 billion, and he's not the richest man. And then we got some people who don't have running water.
Yep.
So I understand capitalism.
Make it make sense.
I do. Yeah. I understand capitalism. I understand that, you know, we shouldn't desire money. I understand that. We shouldn't love money. But here's the thing. Money, right? We cannot work out a better system somehow. To help, you know, with the disparities.
Right.
What does one man do with $80 billion besides build stadiums?
Besides and buy teams. Right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? But I just looked at that when I looked, and I knew he had money, but I didn't realize. I was like 80 billion. I mean, I wasn't
That kind
thinking
of money.
that type of money, right?
Yeah.
And
He
here's
got
the thing:
money.
they
I
were
mean, he got
talking.
money.
I know. Well, here's the thing: in the
Oh,
NFL, the guy, one of the children of Walmart, Sam Walton, one of his children, he just recently bought a team, and he's worth like $11 million. And they were talking about how now he's the richest man in the NFL. I mean, 11 billion, not million, 11 billion. So I'm like, this
wow.
dude, we looking at 11 billion. This guy over here got 80.
Right. Right.
I was like, people was like all over the 11 billion. This dude over here with 80.
Hmm.
All right, but anyway, let me get out of that. But yeah, right. When you start looking at some of those numbers, you're like, what? Then I looked at my
Hmm.
bank account and I said, well, we got a little ways to go.
A little.
just a little ways to go.
Just a little ways.
Yeah, I'm a few 80
Oh,
billion short, but
yeah, really. 79
So my father, oh
billion,
yeah, Deacon Lane said he bought it for 2
100,000.
billion. Yeah, but you know
Oh,
what? My
2 billion.
father's rich in houses and land.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
I
I
think he
just
just
don't
kind
have
of
the
slide
land
some
right
of
now.
that over.
I just
Yeah,
don't have the
really.
land right now. My
I
father's
don't have
rich.
to.
That's like I tell my children, I'm
Oh,
like, this is my house, my room. You
that's
don't have a
true.
house in the room.
You don't
And
have.
my father's rich. I just don't have it yet.
See,
But one day I'll see him face to face.
one day. Oh.
All right, but I am thankful. Look, don't anyone get me wrong out there. I am grateful for
No,
how God has blessed. Just sometimes
absolutely.
looking at the numbers, it just makes you
Right. Some
makes
don't.
you
The
say,
math don't
wow,
add up.
okay,
The math don't add
yeah. Because here's the thing too. This is the crazy thing. I don't even want 80 billion. I don't want
I don't either,
80,
but
but
I'll take
a
I'll
few
take a
a
billion.
few
I don't
million
mind.
could be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Uh,
Oh,
all
at
right,
this
I'm
point,
gonna
two
get the
hundred thousand. Let me just be honest.
yeah. Well,
A
here's
few
the
hundred
you see.
thousand. What do
Well, I got a buddy. Sometimes he say, "Look, just give me $20. Give me $20."
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Oh.
well, that's the other thing that for the Cleveland area, I was just looking at that too. The Haslams, they just spent something like what people were talking about. Hey, they paid Deshaun Watson $230 million, and you got to put that
No.
in escrow. Like you can't say we're gonna do it and don't have the money. So they got the money,
Right.
and then now they just
Right.
spent 800. I think it's $850 million to buy 25% of the Milwaukee Bucks. So 800 and I think it was 850, 875 million or something along those lines. But
Hmm.
yeah,
They only won a
basketball,
championship,
football.
so they worth more now. They worth more.
Yeah, that's true too. That's
Mhm.
true.
They worth more.
Okay. All right. Do we want to talk in Bible today?
Right. Now we are discouraged. We don't have enough money. Oh.
Yeah, but it keeps you closer to the Lord.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
All right. So we started talking, we talked about love that's lasting love. And I think it's important to look at when we start talking about relationships, especially when we're particularly when we're dealing with marriage, that
Mhm.
the whole idea, and this is what I think we have to get together as human beings, the idea, the concept behind marriage is eternity. Now, things happen to change that. Maybe, someone passes away,
Right.
something along those lines. But other than that, and that's why generally in our vows we say to death do us part. But other than that,
Mhm.
we have too many people that are not looking at marriage as something that's eternal, something that's long term. And when we start looking at this, then we start coming up with the idea, the concept of divorce. And we said last week that divorce is not just as simple as some people may think it is. It has effects on the people that
Absolutely.
are involved. And when we look at this, last week we talked about two grounds for divorce. Jesus points to one being sexual immorality, and Paul points to one being desertion by an unbeliever. I think a lot of people like to throw that away. And we see these as two legitimate grounds for biblical divorce according to the Bible. Now, I want to touch on a big point here, because if we begin to look at relationships, we can begin to say, well, I could think of other reasons why people should get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me two right now, but I could think of some reasons in my mind. Right. And when we start to look, what one being physical abuse. Okay. So now when we start looking at this, I don't see it directly in scripture, but let's take a look for a moment at physical abuse. So Evangelist Hill, help us out a little bit when we start talking about, and I think some people too need to realize and understand how it affects people, and it's not okay. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna turn this part over to you right now.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. So, I think we need to really think about how this kind of starts. You think about warning signs, like, what's that red flag? What are those things that show up that could be an indicator that it could go this route? Now, some people will argue up and down, oh, I didn't know that they were like that. I didn't see this coming, and all those kinds of things. But oftentimes, if we start to look retroactively back and say, okay, let me see what were the markers or warnings or indicators and things that I can perhaps pay attention to for the future. And so a few of those kind of warning signs we want to think about are behaviors that intimidate. That intimidation piece, that control piece, that really is a red flag for something. Not saying the person will physically put their hands on you, but the intimidation piece could be the start of that, the control. Also, manipulation, humiliating a person, downgrading who they are as a person, devaluing them as a person, maybe even getting them to the point where they're isolating from their family, from their friends, from maybe even their work, and say, oh, you don't need to work, I'll take care of you, whatever that looks like. And so trying to seclude them to themselves and take out all other, if you will, eyes on or other viewers in their lives. You think about family who may be watching, or coworkers or friends, or whatever the case may be. So start to isolate individuals. And then it can get to a point where a person maybe tries to intimidate, and by threatening or making a person afraid in some ways, whether it's afraid of an action or afraid of repercussions of some reason, afraid that they're going to be verbally chastised, things like that nature. Then there's also terrorizing. That is another, warning sign or red flags. Person's terrorizing or coercing you to do things you don't really want to do. And it could be small things. It could start out small, but then it can grow to much bigger things. Then you think about individuals that may threaten or blame or even hurt or point the finger, and it's all about you did this to me versus my part in this process or this interaction. And then individuals who actually injure and try their best to hurt someone. So those are some of the red flags and warning signs that could be indicators. And I know oftentimes we don't see those in a combination together. We see them in parts and pieces, little by little. And so it becomes dangerous in some ways because it's the pile up effect. It builds up. And then all of a sudden now there's a hit of some sort, or there's an explosion of some sort, if you will, in the relationship. So when it comes to physical abuse, the definition through the justice.org, justice.gov, and that's where the criminal system that looks at what does physical abuse look like? What are we declaring that to be? So physical abuse, hitting, slapping, shoving, grabbing, pinching, biting, hair pulling, things on your body pulling that, okay? These are types of physical abuse. And these types of abuse can include maybe denying a partner of medical care, or even forcing them to do substances or drugs or alcohol, all those kinds of things for whatever reason. So that can include that as far as physical abuse is concerned. Okay. And when you think about all of that from a legal standpoint, that's domestic violence. And domestic violence alone, by definition, is a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship that is used by one partner to gain power or control over that other intimate partner. And so we have to look at that from a holistic standpoint to say, wait a minute, it's not just the words this person is saying. Now this person has put physical hands on an individual, and this combination together creates that control, if you will. So that domestic violence is there, whether people want to agree to it or not. But there's help and there's resources. There's domestic violence hotlines, things of that nature that you can reach out. And so when you think about the opportunity of exploring what's happening in my relationship that perhaps is really not the best, it's not the best setup. You have to think about that. So
Okay. All right. So when I hear you talk about this, I think that when we start to look at this in a relationship, so let me say this to any person out there that's not dating, and especially I want to talk to kids, I want to talk to teens that are dating. If anyone puts their hands on you, you should call it quits. You need to end that relationship. This isn't a marriage. And you don't have time to be fixing that person. They need to go somewhere and get fixed because you're in a bad relationship. Absolutely. And you don't have the time. They don't own you. You are not theirs. You are free. You are independent. You need to let your parents know. You need to let someone of authority knows. You need to get this handled right away, because depending upon how toxic that person is, you may need a restraining order. It may be a number of things and so forth. But you have to make it clear that you're going to cut ties. This is over. This is done, because you don't want this to repeat itself. Absolutely. And I think the issue is I go back to that time where we had Chris Brown and Rihanna, and you had that beating take place. You have Ray Lewis, not Ray Lewis. Ooh, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. It was the running back for the Baltimore Ravens. I think his name had Ray in it, but the running back. Somebody gonna have to help me with that. The running back, they had the video of the elevator of him beating his wife. Now the thing was, when you first heard it, you kind of like, but then when you see it, you're like, oh my goodness. But we need to look at that. Ray Rice, there it is. I knew there was a Ray in there. Thank you, Jamar Freeman. Way to come through.
Hey, Jamar.
But Ray Rice, as well as DIC, God bless you. That we have to understand that this is serious. And it happens. And I think that somewhere along the line, the lesson isn't being taught everywhere. So Chris Brown said, I saw it happen to my mother. And then in his mind, he almost thinks, well, I'm not going to do this. But then he turns out to be the offender and repeats the cycle.
That's it.
And I remember, for me, and growing up in my household, I was the youngest. So now I have older sisters who are bigger and older than me. But as I'm growing, we're coming to a place where eventually the scales, they begin to shift. And this is what men have to realize. And I mean, even if a woman, and I don't want to condone women abuse. I mean, it could go either way.
Absolutely. It can.
But men also have to understand, generally, and this is not being sexist, generally, they're going to be stronger than a woman. And I remember in being a kid, one of my sisters and I, we got into it. Now I'm a kid, I'm younger, I'm smaller, she's bigger than me. And we got in a confrontation. She kicked me, I hit her, this, that going, is going on. So listen to this. My father spanks me. And I'm like, what's going on here?
Right.
And he said, I want to teach you a lesson. And he says, you never hit a woman. So this lesson has to be taught. If it's not taught, you're not going to have it.
Absolutely.
And really the
Absolutely.
lesson needs to be across the board that we don't put hands
Both.
on each other. In a relationship,
right.
you can't. And I seen women, and they could be smaller, and they're going off, hitting, punching, slapping, whatever. And it's like, whoa, you are not justified just because he's bigger or might be able to take it. It doesn't justify throwing hands. So, we got to make that clear that
we do.
There's not an okay situation. Men and women, and like I said, I remember younger. I remember being in school, and we had some girls beat up some boys when we're in elementary school. And you're like, man, what's going on? I mean, seriously, it happens. But once again, as we keep growing, things begin to change. And that's why men and women, they both have to be taught these rules of engagement. You mad, you upset, this going on, that going on, then you got to deal with that in another way. So physical abuse, I think as you're reading those things, you talk about pinching, pushing. Some of them may think, well, I just pushed him, no big deal.
Yes, but still.
But it's a problem.
It's a problem. It really is.
And if we're not taught that, then we may not understand. Like I said, my father taught me, because he told me this. He said, if anything go down, he said, I'm not asking questions. You're going to get it. So what did that teach me? It taught me, don't hit women.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But it was a good lesson. That's what I'm saying. Had he not taught me that, maybe I become comfortable because, we're siblings. We have an issue breaks out. And then now I'm comfortable and think that that's how you handle, and that's not how you handle things.
That's not. And that becomes the perpetuation of it. So again, going back to definition of domestic violence, a pattern of abuse. So it's not like, oh, it was this one time. It is a pattern of abusive stuff going on here that we got to pay attention to. And it's not okay. It is not okay.
And that's the big message. And I said, I really want my teens to understand this. And it's going to be grown people too, but I'm focusing on the teens in just particular case. I mean, I remember seeing, I've seen girls come to high school and they got a black eye, and it came from the boyfriend. And I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, if I was a father, I would be livid, but you're not going to get that story either. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So, and that's the thing. People will protect the abuser.
Yes. Big time. Yeah.
And that's what we got to look at. Right.
For a number of different reasons. Emotionally, mentally, they feel like they deserve that. They feel like they, did something wrong, that perhaps that's what they get as a consequence, if you will. So it's a combination of things of why people will hide or pretend as if it's not that bad or it's not that big of a deal. It was just this one time. He said sorry. She said sorry. Right, and then they go into this honeymoon phase, and it goes right back into that cycle. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. The honey, right. It goes into the honey. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. And then boom.
It's a control. It's a control wheel. It's like it's that honeymoon phase, and then it goes back at some point. And the time that it goes back to that abusive, that honeymoon phase gets shorter and shorter. Before is a longer time in between. And after the patterns keep going, that honeymoon phase just gets shorter and shorter. So now it's a day when it maybe was a week or 2 or months. Now it's just,
Yep. And I think as though it's also important for us as outsiders. You have friends, you have loved ones, and so forth, and you start seeing some of these signs to realize that as they are in this, it may not be just easy for them to walk away because their emotions or whatever are in it, and they're trying to protect and all those other things.
Financial,
and we have to be right. Oh yeah, that's true too. Am I ready to leave? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have to be sensitive to what they're going through and not just look at them, so to speak, as being, stupid. Oh, they just stupid. I don't know what's wrong. But there's a lot more going on psychologically.
Yes.
And as you said too, we don't know what kind of psychological warfare that they've been going through.
That's right. That's right. So at that point, it could be almost do or die. And at that point, they're like, okay, I got to figure out how this weighs out in my life. And so I will
Mhm.
hear oftentimes people will say, oh, they're, like you said, they're stupid, they're this, or why do they stay? And I can't believe they do, and on and on and on. But the reality is, it's a lot tied up in this. It is not just an easy one decision, leave and go. The finances is in there potentially. Kids may be involved, family members, on and on and on. So it's just a lot more involved than let me just walk out the door. Because potentially that
Mhm.
person that walks could be the one that really loses it all, in an essence, you know? So it's a
Right,
lot more
right.
involved than just saying, oh, just leave, just leave. And let me pause for the cause when people may say, I would never. Be careful what you say you may never do, because you don't know what situation you may find yourself in, and you're backed against the
Mhm.
wall in that same sort of scenario. So be careful. You don't know. You don't know.
Right, right.
Yeah.
All right. So now when we look at this from a biblical standpoint, and we're talking divorce, so we're talking about abuse, and like I said, we're making clear abuse is not,
Mhm.
it's not healthy, it's not good, it's not acceptable. We're not condoning it.
Not
Um,
at all.
and when we start to look at this, um, the first thing you have to look at, well, let me say before we go to the Bible, from a humanitarian standpoint, for
Yes.
your own safety and so forth,
Hmm.
that you just need to get out. You need to call family,
Hmm.
friends, somebody. I mean, safety.
Hmm.
You need to get out. But now
Yes.
I want to go from a Bible standpoint, and just you gotta hear me out. There's gonna be some challenging talk here, but we gotta have tough conversations sometimes. All right.
We got
All right.
absolutely.
So now there are some that quote from the Bible and say that there are three reasons why, Jesus doesn't mention this as a reason to get out of marriage, but they would say the abuser separated from the marriage. So they
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
physically leave the home, but they separated. So 1 Corinthians 7:15, what Paul says about abandoning and so forth, this would fit. So now
Hmm.
someone else would say too, while the abuser is not committing adultery, it's an
Hmm.
immoral conduct that destroys
Mm.
the marriage covenant. And the one flesh relationship that we see in Genesis 2:24 is essential for marriage. And this
Hmm.
person has destroyed that.
Hmm.
Also in Exodus chapter 21, verses 10 through 11, we see that physical abuse is a violation of the husband's
Mm.
or wife responsibility to care for and protect.
Good.
So therefore,
That's
it
good.
breaks the covenant. All right.
Mm.
So
Mm.
now
So good.
as they look at that, they say, this is evil, it damages the relationship, and something must be done to protect the abused partner from
Hmm.
further abuse. So therefore, the answer is divorce. So
Hmm.
now I say this cautiously. We have to be careful how we try to open the door for divorce.
Yes.
So once again, I am never condoning physical abuse. I'm not saying someone has to stay, but I want to watch how we open this door. So let's look real quickly at scripture. Matthew 5:32, Matthew 19:19, basically both saying the same thing. And Jesus is talking. He says, but I say unto you that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery. And like I said, verse 9 says basically the same thing as well. So now this brings us to a tension here. The tension is I can't condone physical abuse, but then Jesus points out and doesn't open a door widely for several reasons for divorce.
Hmm.
And people will, find a number of different reasons. And like I said, I could look and I could think and say, wow, this seems like a valid reason. So
Hmm.
before I
Hmm.
dive deep into the full answer to that, I know I'm not giving a total pass right now, and I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can or can't right now. I just want to talk about it a little bit. I mean, because look at this. Because look, Evangelist Hill, Jesus said he only gave one reason. But then who in their right mind can condone or tell somebody stay in a relationship with somebody going to pop you in your head?
Right.
So I have a conundrum here. I have a tension in the text. Now, I already know some people are like, well, I'm walking out the door. I don't care. and I am not mad at you. I am not mad at you, okay?
Yeah.
Now, here's another reason for divorce. Some people divorce because of material neglect or emotional neglect. Now, I'm going to say, you know, with the changes in life for women, this is not as bad as it used to be. Because let's put in context, when we look at the Bible and the Bible times, when we look at women through the years, that there were not always a lot of opportunities for women to make money, to hold land. You know, you can't have land in your name, to have rights and so forth. You know, like some people, you know, say a long time, well, I'm just going to pack up and I would go and this and that. But you weren't living in those times when you could not just, when you needed a man, you know, you needed an uncle or daddy, somebody that's going to be able to vouch for you, take care of you, and so forth. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a couple comments on too. So look.
And that makes a difference. That makes a difference in knowing the changing of times where maybe there are opportunities for a person to be able to sustain and not feel like they have to stay. That's where I'm going with that whole, you know, feeling like financially they have to remain if there is these kind of, you know, tumultuous kind of things going on. So because of those opportunities, maybe there is a chance now the person can make a decision to leave versus I have to stay because financially I can't support myself, my children, whatever.
Right. And some of the laws have helped through time where, I mean, like if you have a homemaker and you have someone going out and making money, you can't, anybody that's taking care of the house knows that taking care of the house is a full-time job.
It's a job, right?
You know, that's a full-time job. But in the past, people would be left with nothing. But now, like I said, in some states, you're going to be able to get support and so forth. So we're just talking about leaving can make it easier.
A little bit easier.
So, but look at, once again, divorce because of material neglect or emotional neglect. You know, do we find that in scripture as a reason for divorce? You know, the Pharisees begin to challenge Jesus. And they say, well, Moses talks about divorce and he looks at this and, you know, he basically tells them because your hearts were hard. Moses had to give some relief to the people because you were so hard.
Would do right.
and those are relationships we have to watch where people are controlling one way or another.
Yes. Right.
You know, they could be controlling financially, they could be controlling with intimacy, they could be controlling emotionally, and we got to watch that. And you spoke of isolation. You know, I don't want you around your friends. You can't go out. You can't do nothing, you know. And it's like, now you're in prison.
Right. Absolutely. So now what? You know? And that, where does that leave that person that feels as if their connection to family, friends, etc., is gone? So now all they do have is that abuser or the perpetrator, whoever. So now what are they left to do? Stay oftentimes, you know, because to be out there by yourself totally. And then you think about the emotional, like you said, now their self-worth or who they are and value as themselves, that's damaged and probably gone at this point.
Right. So we look at this. So now when we look at the Bible, does the Bible say you could go or should you stay? I know I'm just trying to stress this here. So, and then we hear people say that, well, this marriage just can't be repaired, or we are incompatible.
Yeah.
Does it sound like familiar term? We are incompatible. And I believe one of the most famous reasons for divorce is irreconcilable differences.
Solvable differences. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So now let me ask you, before I go back to the Bible, let me ask you, are there some type of coping skills? And I don't know if I mentioned this to you directly or not, so this might be on the spot. Are there some type of coping skills for this, irreconcilable differences, these incompatible issues, that we can look at instead of looking and saying this is the reason for divorce?
I mean, at least it begs the question, I would say, to have a discussion about what are these irreconcilable, issues.
Right.
What is it about? Is it that you don't like the curtains and he does? Is it like the toilet is,
Right,
the seat is up or it is down? Seriously. I mean, people really get hung up on the tissue is going this way versus the other way. And so if people come with all these kinds of things, and really it's just the small little foxes kind of deal. It's really the blow up effect. It's like, yeah, I'm tired of him leaving this. I'm tired of her doing this, not cleaning this, not doing that. But the bigger picture is, why can't you communicate? That's really the bigger question. Where's the communication about these things?
All right.
And why is there this fight over these things that seemingly are an issue for one person, maybe not the other, and not coming together? So part of that coping, if you will, or being able to deal. So think about coping in a broad sense of being able to deal, being able to handle, right? And so from a larger standpoint, what's the compromise here? Every relationship has a compromise. I know people don't want to hear that because they think very negatively with compromise.
Right.
Because compromise means I'm giving up what I think, what I want to really come to you. No.
Well, let me ask you this: really, do you have to compromise when you're right? If I'm right, do I got to compromise?
Possibly. It may be one of those, as the scripture says, study to be quiet at that moment. Seriously. See, we don't want to hear that stuff. We don't want to hear okay, hold on, you may need to calm down for a moment and listen to what this other person is saying. Because communication says, you may be right, but can you hear me out? That's where the communication and compromise. I understand that may be correct in what you're saying. You may be accurate in what you're saying, but can you at least hear me out to validate what I'm saying? Even if it's incorrect, even if you don't agree with it. Seriously, it's the validation. People want to be heard and validated.
Yes.
Even if it is incorrect information. Validate it, and be heard. And sometimes that's enough to where that person says, we can do exactly what you want to do, no problem. That sounds like a good idea. But yeah, I would like to at least be heard, be understood, if you will. And that's a lot of times with miscommunication. One is going one way, one is going another way. So coping, all right, compromise.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. So let me throw this out there real quick. No, I want you. So let me throw this out real quick. Okay, toilet paper. We got to take a poll. Over the top or underneath? And seat up or down. Seat up and down. Over the top, underneath, seat up and down. We'll take a quick poll.
Those very things set people up honest to goodness. Those little things. Listen, see people talking about truth. They tell the truth.
All right, so yeah, we got over the top. Over the top.
It seems like the women
come on.
Over
the top. Seat up or down.
Over the top.
Yeah, over the top. So listen to this. So I'm gonna tell you that for some reason, for some reason, I used to be underneath, but then Lady Lisa was over the top, and then like you're saying, it's a small dispute over top, and then later I found out the correct way was over the top. They gave reasons because it goes against the wall and some other stuff, and this and that's what But now I could argue
sanitary nature, but that's the same thing with the top, up or down. It's a sanitary thing. It really is.
Hold on. Let me argue this. Let me argue this for a second though. For all the women. I just want to argue this for all the women. Now, I always put the seat down because once again, I grew up in the house and I had 3 women. So I was going to learn that lesson quick. But
really.
I don't know how someone can say, well, if you don't put the seat down, I may fall in. You got to always look before you sit. Always look.
Yes.
That's the rule.
Yes.
but I
Please
understand.
watch.
Yes, when you cover
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cover it up, you keep I don't know what to say, airborne things
Germs.
away
Yes.
and all of
Yes.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Come up through the
Yeah, we do
drains,
have
all
some
that
people
stuff. So
say
it
I
goes
don't
back.
care, it don't matter.
Yeah. But that's that compromise. See, that's the
Oh,
compromise where
oh,
I'm not
I
gonna
like
argue it. Just go ahead and put it down. Not a
I
big
like Sister
deal. Like, why do we
Octavia's.
get in a tizzy
Yes, I
as
hear
long as we
you.
got the toilet paper? That's right.
Yeah, right. But that's the most important thing.
Yes, that you got the toilet. But see, if we think about that, oftentimes it's not so much about the toilet seat. Here's where we want to get bigger. It's not about the toilet seat or the toilet paper. It's really about this person didn't listen to what you were
Come,
saying.
come
And
on, come
that's
on.
really what it is. It's these are minor. And I'm not minimizing those issues because maybe that's a big deal in your house. But it's more so about what is this communication between the two of you? That's really what it's about.
Right,
You
and
know?
like what you're saying too, it's about that, but and also like you said, tolerance. That
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of goes before when you were talking about patience.
Yeah.
Of
Oh,
it's not
please
only
don't
what
bring
we're
it.
doing on the outside, but see, it's not only what we're
Yes.
doing on the outside, but it's
Yes.
how we feel on the inside. That we got to learn how to correct that, and
That's it.
what we're dealing with is our maturity issues. Maturity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That in
For sure.
maturity you learn how to handle differences. We're not all going to be exactly the
That's
same, do
right.
everything that you like. I mean, no marriage,
That's
no one's
right.
doing everything right and perfect, because if that's the
No.
case, then we wouldn't need Jesus to be perfect. Everybody else was
That's
already
right.
perfect, so there's going
That's
to be
right.
mistakes. But I think too,
That's
in
right.
marriage, you can't let roommate issues be marriage issues. So
Oh,
some
that's
of them are
good.
roommate issues. We dealing with
Mm.
living together. So that this isn't going to destroy our marriage. We just got to figure out how to live together. These are
Come
roommate
on.
issues.
Come on.
So
That's
yeah, we
deep.
got to look at
Listen.
that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm just
All right.
saying. Because you know what? What you end up finding is that now the relationship is like a roommate situation. Seriously. It's no longer
Mm-hmm.
a marriage and communication with a roommate. I can come and go as I please. I can kick, we can kind of do things that say, hey, you're going to do your part. If you don't do it, then okay. But when you're in a committed relationship, it's all hands on deck at this point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
got to think
Right.
about
Right. Right.
what's happening that is it's in this relationship, in this connection, that's causing this friction on these small, seemingly small things. It's
Mm-hmm.
much bigger. It's much bigger.
Right.
Much
No. Right.
bigger.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's the point I want to get to when we're talking about marriage, is that these issues, when we allow them to be the cause for the
Yeah.
relationship,
Yes.
then we're looking for the way out in the divorce,
Right.
as
Right.
opposed to going in with the mindset of how do we make this work.
Make it
And
work.
you spoke of how we have to make some compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's a word I like for marriage couples. I believe we have to stop looking at the ideal of compromise, because when you compromise, you have to give up something.
True.
And I believe we need to go into the mindset of collaboration. We are
That's good. That's real
collaborating.
good.
So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
now I am, along with you, trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what works best for both. So now we're not talking about sacrificing and giving up. What can we
Yes.
both go for and build together? It's not like a music
Mm-hmm.
collaboration. We're going to come together and we're going to make music.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to
Mm-hmm. Right.
collaborate. We're going to come together in the
Yes.
relationship, and we
Mm-hmm.
are going to make this work. I don't want you to
Yes.
sacrifice. I don't want you having your mind, I gave up this and I did that and I'm always sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
No, collaborate then. Stop
Yeah.
sacrificing and start collaborating. What
But then how do
works
you
for
have that
us?
conversation? What works for us? Absolutely. But how do you have that conversation with individuals who feel one feels just as right and the other feel just as right? So then where is that communication in the lines of how do we make this, like you said, collaboratively work, where there is perhaps a different opinion between the two?
Well, that's also and this is
Ah,
maturity of a relationship. When you
yes,
go from
yes.
right and wrong, the point is not right and wrong in a relationship. When we
Good.
go from
That's
right
good.
and wrong
That's good.
to love. If I'm loving
Mm.
and you're loving, love bears
Mm.
no record.
Mm.
Love is not trying to figure out. Love endures all things, believes all things,
I don't
hopes
know.
all
Mm.
things. So we gotta move,
Yes.
and it's a mindset of moving from your self rights. I have a right
Ooh.
for this. I have a right for that.
Aha.
But you're
Good.
not that anymore because two have become one. And
Ooh.
how can two
Mm.
walk
Mm. Mm.
together unless they agree?
Let's
So
they
now we got
agree.
to be in collaboration to be in agreement.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the thing about it. But I say it's the immaturity. Like some people, they love and they love easily because they're ready to give. But when people are
Mm-hmm.
looking for what I'm going to get, then that's when we
Yeah.
start to get in trouble and we start talking about my rights. But how are you supposed to love? And that's the challenge. And
Mm.
I'm gonna say, I mean, like, look, I'm
That
not
is.
standing here telling you that, I have always been this or that or whatever. This is the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
challenge of a
Yes.
relationship. And this calls people to grow spiritually because
Mm-hmm.
this is also our walk with God is about not my
Mm-hmm.
will, but your will, Lord.
Ooh-wee.
So
Mm.
we talked about this in marriage, and that's why I'm gonna get off this in a second because I gotta get back to divorce. I'm on marriage, but I gotta get back to divorce. But we talked about in
Ah.
marriage too. We gotta know our roles. We gotta
Mm.
know the role of a
Mm.
husband and the role of a wife. And if you don't learn how to be a husband, you don't learn how to be a wife, then there's going to be trouble. If you don't learn how
Mm-hmm.
to work together,
Mm-hmm.
because we're forsaking all others and trying to build a relationship here. And that's why
Yeah,
you got to be
absolutely.
careful unless you're a counselor, you're a spiritual advisor, you're a pastor, you're doing
Mm-hmm.
something, but you got to stay out of other people's relationships. You can
Mm-hmm.
encourage somebody, but when you got that friend that's telling you, for reasons other than biblical reasons, girl, you need to get out. I can't believe he did that,
Mm-hmm.
or man, you need
Mm-hmm.
to do this and that. Now you in trouble. You don't start getting
Trouble.
in people's relationships because that's between those two, you
Absolutely.
know? So
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
when I look at this, I got something. Let me
Mm-hmm.
go.
Oh boy.
All right.
Oh boy. What you got?
No, this is
Ah.
this is from David Brewer, and he writes his argument um, about some some of the messages in the Old Testament about divorce. And he agrees with the two traditional accounts, adultery and desertion, but he also looks at Exodus 21. And I'm not going, do I have that? I think I have that. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Do I have that Exodus 21? No, I don't have it. That's fine. You'll get the gist of it. All right. In Exodus 21, in verses 10 and 11, Exodus, it talks about a husband must give wife food, clothing, and love. So we talked before about,
Mm-hmm.
reasons for divorce. Now, I want you to understand at the time of Jesus's time, at the time of the first century and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
the Jewish interpreters of the time, they accepted neglect of food, clothing, and marital rights as a ground fit for divorce. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
Jesus quotes Deuteronomy chapter 24, and he allows divorce for sexual immorality, intimacy, and so forth issues,
Mm-hmm.
he is dealing with Deuteronomy 24. He's not talking about Exodus. In Matthew 19:3, when the Pharisees questioned Jesus, is it lawful to divorce, one's
Mm-hmm.
wife for any cause? They're asking him, they're trying to trip him up, they're trying to find something. Let's go here real quick. The Pharisees came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, is it lawful to put away his wife for every cause? So look at this. They're asking about the different reasons to put away the wife. And they're getting this from somewhere. And I'm going to tell you who in a minute. And he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? So look at this. And this is go to build off some other lessons we had, he made them male and female, not male and male, female and female. All right. And he said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. So let's understand here marriage. We're talking about two people coming together. They shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. So you got to keep people out your relationship unless they're encouraging and trying to help you, mentor you, and so forth, but not get out. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give writing of the divorcement and put her away? All right. So when I begin to look at this and we begin to see this, the response that he begins to look at is, look, the hardness of your heart. Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. Now he said, but from the beginning, it was not so. So now let's understand the beginning. The beginning concept and idea that comes from God is that marriage is eternal. Jesus gives no indication that he's endorsing various views of divorce. And these various views, you know, I found somebody that looks prettier. She messed up the food. I mean, hey, I'm not exaggerating. These were the reasons. These were the reason that the Jewish men in the first century were finding to divorce their wife. She messed up the meal. She's no good, you know, because we get into that household. She's supposed to be able to cook, clean, do this, do that. And she can't do this right. That's right. So we got to be careful too out there in the world today, not because you found somebody cuter, not because they get you better. They get me, they understand me, but you already married. If we look at this passage though, in Exodus 21, that Brewer is trying to defend and use, the context is of a slave woman who has been taken as a wife. And this deals with the views of the Shemites and the slavery laws. And back in the day, you had the Shammais and the Hillels, who were the Jewish scholars in the first century, and their commentary in the Torah began to shape the Jewish theology and philosophy for hundreds of years. So the Shamites and the Hillelites were the two dominant approaches to Jewish law during the years of Jesus's earthly ministry. So now sometimes when I don't want to spend too much time on this, but when you look at the Jewish writings from the rabbis, they can begin to take on as their scripture themselves. But people got to remember, they're not scripture. This is their point of view and their interpretation. Right. So now we have to understand when we look at scripture, this here was dealing with a slave girl and they were given the parameters and so forth that was going to go on with that. But when we come back to the issues that we are dealing with today and we're looking at divorce, how does this affect me? What does it mean in the Bible? You know, we got irreconcilable differences. What's going on? So when we look at this, this is what I need you to understand. If I look at the Bible, it doesn't tell me I can get divorced because of physical abuse. Doesn't tell me I can get divorced because we don't get along anymore. Doesn't tell me I can get divorced because this person isn't providing for me. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason being is because if we go to the concept of marriage, if we begin to look at what marriage is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a man and a woman who forsake all others. They walk together, they agree, and they love one another. The mistake we make is that when we decide to marry people who don't know God and don't love God, or we marry people who are in the church, but they don't love God. Just because somebody going to church don't mean they love God.
That's good.
If we build the relationships where we are looking to walk with God, then all of the issues will be reconcilable because the husband is going to love the wife as Christ loved the church. The wife is going to submit to her husband and she's going to be like the bride that
Yes.
the Christ is coming back for. So the issues that people are dealing with are not the issues they're supposed to be dealing with in marriage when they have people that walk and love God. And I'm saying that the marriage is going to be perfect, but we're talking about that reconciliation can happen, that things can be worked out, they can be restored, they can be fixed, they can be dealt with. Now, once again, let me make this plain. When it comes to physical abuse, I'm not telling anybody to stay. But now let me also say there are relationships where there has been physical abuse. People have gone to counseling, they work things out, recover. It has worked. There's been cases when even though adultery it can end in divorce, but people have stayed together and they worked it out. So I just want to make that clear too. Things can be worked out, but you have to be sure that the steps and the efforts are taken to make it work. And that's why desertion has to do with an unbeliever and a believer, not two believers. There should be no desertion with two believers because they should both be walking together and agreeing. So the point is, we have to spend more time before we get into the marriage, making sure that the person is the right person to marry. When you start to look and say, well, you know, he smelled good, he looked good, he funny, she this, she that, and all these other things, but you don't care if they go to church, you don't care if they know God, you don't care if they baptize, you don't care if they fast, like all these other things. You don't care if they're submitting to God. If they submit to God, all these things help in the marriage. So now I gotta get to this. Right. And that's what we got to look at. So now, so let me speak to somebody. Let me speak to somebody specifically, okay? Somebody that realized that they violated the laws of divorce, they remarried, they did not meet the biblical standard, you know, are they in a place now when they need to just get a divorce now and get out the marriage they're in? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say you at a place where you need to just go to the repentance from what happened earlier, but then build what you're in and make that great. Now, let me send this caution out there. Some people have been trying to work the system. I know, and this is not made up. I know people that have got divorced and say, it's been desertion. It's been desertion. You know, they're not being intimate with me anymore. They deserted me. They're not talking to me. They're not treating me right. And this and that. No, you don't get divorced and then get remarried. And I know somebody that's going through 5 marriages and they claim desertion. No, you just trying to run the system. You don't get a pass for that. You don't get a pass for that. That's why desertion was with unbelievers. So if I was their pastor, I'll tell you, you can't marry no more. No, you cannot marry anymore. You done. You done.
Pastor,
and we got to remember that.
They're the one, though. They're the one, Pastor. They're the one. Isn't that what people say? This one is the right one. The other ones were fake. They were the phonies. They were the...
All right.
I don't.
Yeah, I hear you. No, it happens. So now, when we look at this, let me say this too. Like when you look at the world, some people say, should we look at this system of marriage and divorce? Like, no, should we look for the world to do this also and so forth too? And I would say yes, because the institution of marriage is God's. So now what the world does and how they do, and I know they got the laws, but if the world asks or the world want to know, this is the institution. This is how it's supposed to be. Not what y'all put on the books and all this other stuff, you know, and some people come down hard on the church and all this kind of thing. No, we're talking about the Bible, and we got to look to try to make sure people understand marriage is supposed to be forever. It's supposed to be. All right.
Yeah.
Now, let me say this, and I'm going to close out with this, and you can help Evangelist Hill with this too. So now let's understand this, though. As a church, divorce affects those in the church. And as a church, you're not the pastor, so we don't need you beating up on people. The church has to be a safe place for people, a place for healing. Even if they were the cheater, it's still got to be a place for healing, a place for forgiveness.
Absolutely.
a place for forgiveness for those who caused the hurt and for those who received the hurt.
Mm-hmm.
The church has to be a place of forgiveness. Divorce is not yet, people feel like, okay, I failed at something, I made a mistake, it didn't work. I mean, there's a lot that goes with divorce. People looking at me, they think this about me, and we have to understand that just like with any other thing that are going on in the lives of people, that the church needs to be a place that hurt people can come and be loved and not judged.
That's right. That's right.
Let the pastor take care of what the pastor needs to take care of, but you, as a member of the church, need to be there to support and to help. And anyone who has been involved in this, the encouragement comes in that Jesus, we have a high priest who is able to sympathize and empathize with our weakness and sufferings.
Yes, God.
And it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but you have people that understand you're going through something, and God understands that you're going through. He knows what it's like to be betrayed. He knows what it's like to deal with heartache and disappointment. And he's there to help you, as well as the church is there to help as well. And we have to be a part of that healing process. And once again, even for the person that causes the pain.
That's right.
Because, I mean, so, sometimes we looked at people side-eye, this and that, and look at it. But that's not our position to judge.
It's not.
I think of Jesus, when the woman that was pulled in adultery, he was like, he who was without sin throw the first stone. I don't think any of us in a position to throw those stones. So, hey, the marriage didn't work out. Some issues happened, but the church is not there to judge the people, but we need to be able to assist them, to help them, to let them go through that healing process. It's a place that the hurt can come. That's our position. I'm gonna end it there. I'm gonna end it there before I go in another direction. But we go back to Evangelist Hill. The key is love.
It is.
And love is it is transcribed as charity. Translated, that's the word I was looking for. Charity. Charity. And yeah, that's the challenge for us.
Yes.
Because selfishness, I want this.
Absolutely.
I want that.
Me, I. Yeah.
Right. But if you have a relationship where people are ready to give, and that's why I said before people go on and run into divorce, they need to get help. And don't wait till the house is half burning down to ask for help.
Right. Absolutely.
We're not talking, we fighting, we feuding. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys up in this place, and it's war, it's ugly, it's nasty, it's whatever. And then now you're gonna say something. We need to talk before we get down that path.
That's right.
But there's help out there.
Communication is key. Communication. There's help.
Evangelist, just talk briefly about help for people either in abuse or those. I mean, I don't think everyone understands what counseling can do and how it can help.
Yes. In general, counseling just, you don't necessarily always have to have just the most traumatic thing going on in your life to go and seek out services, professional services from a counselor. It really could just be times where your life is just not where you want it to be. There's an incongruence somehow. And so tell people, no, you're not going in typically telling that your whole life is just wonderful and great. You probably don't need counseling at that point. You're going at a point where there is something that's just not consistent in your life, whatever that looks like. I want to be a different way. I want to think differently. I want to feel differently. I want to behave differently, whatever that looks like. So that's more of a simplistic way of looking at counseling. Look at it as an objective point of view, potentially it should be. Someone who can listen, someone who can validate maybe just how and validate your feelings and emotions and that kind of thing, and just be heard. without having judgment, without having criticism, and just being able to get your voice heard. And so just being mindful that is very helpful, and it can be very helpful. And don't wait. Like you said, when the house is on fire, not saying that's too late, but the damage is done. Significant damage is done. And so it may take much more to get
Right.
it rebuilt, and to restore it. That's where it comes from with not waiting so long. When you see the flags, when you see the red flags, when you see the warning signals, where there's smoke, there is fire. It may not come right away, but there's something somewhere that's getting ready to explode. Bottom line. So where there's smoke, there's fire. Pay attention to it.
Amen. We threw up the domestic violence hotline just because that's
Mhm.
just such a serious topic, and we want to make
It
sure
is.
people are able to get help. Don't want you to
Mhm.
feel that you just have to go through it, that you're in it
That's
by
right.
yourself, but there is help out there. All right. Well, God bless you all. I want to remind you as we are in our Lenten seasons that I ask that you find 30 minutes extra, not total, but extra, that we're going to consecrate to God, that you spend that time in prayer, reading, fasting, something along those lines, that we want to continue to draw closer to the Lord and allow for Him to move in our lives. God bless you. We love you. I thank our special guest, Evangelist Carmela Hill. Thank you.
Amen.
Appreciate you.
Amen.
All right. God bless
Absolutely. Thank
everyone.
you.